I'm going to tempt fate here. I shouldn't. Ordinarily, there are more fireworks going off round about now. You know, couple of weeks, just over a couple of weeks to Halloween. You'd normally hear the banging and the madness and the fireworks and the terrified dogs running for cover. But it's quiet-ish. Hope I haven't blown that, by the way. Hope I haven't blown it. But it is quiet around for this time of year. Schools will close in Northern Ireland from Monday, along with pubs and restaurants, cafes. As Arlene Foster told us today, the First Minister of Northern Ireland, it's a full lockdown, effectively, in the north. The moves are among new restrictions being imposed by the executive there. Why? Well, because of rising cases. It was announced that 4 more people had died with COVID-19 on Wednesday in Northern Ireland. 4 more deaths with COVID. It's beautiful, the language. Hospitality businesses will be limited to takeaway and delivery services for 4 weeks from Friday. Now, you will know, if you're paying attention here in Blighty, that there's a big row brewing. Astonishingly, the leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, sir, if you please, well, he's basically been criticising the government's introducing of the new 3-tier system. Starmer says we need a full lockdown or a circuit breaker. They've introduced the term circuit breaker because it doesn't sound as bad as lockdown, even though it is pretty much full lockdown. Starmer wants another lockdown. Yes, I know, the party of the working class, the working man and woman, indeed. Anyway, I'm not going to subject you to any of the exchange between Johnson and Starmer at PMQs today because I don't think you deserve it, dear listener. You've been quite good this week. Who needs to hear it? I've just told you, you don't need to hear it. Pictures of large crowds gathering in Liverpool last night at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, half 11, have shamed Liverpool, according to the Mayor, Joe Anderson. Footage on social media showed people dancing and surrounding a police car in Concert Square at 10 o'clock last night. Now, one of those who took the photographs, amongst those photographing and filming the scene was none other than Inzamam Rashid. Now, Inzamam is a reporter for Sky News. So he filmed some of the young revellers last night. Why were they out dancing? Well, Liverpool is going into Tier 3 tonight. Basically, all pubs and bars and restaurants to be closed, more or less. The ones that don't serve food, right? Dreadful stuff. Terrible for Liverpool. So Inzamam Rashid filmed this. It was on Sky today. It shamed Liverpool, said the Mayor. Here's what Inzamam Rashid had to say about the scene that unfolded at Concert Square last night.
Doctors, intensive care doctors from hospitals in Liverpool have been watching the footage that we've just seen of party scenes last night, a couple of hours before the Tier 3 lockdown restrictions were implemented here in Liverpool. They've been watching that footage and they're quite frankly disgusted. Many are heartbroken to see what was happening in Liverpool.
Doctors are disgusted and heartbroken that youngsters were dancing around in Concert Square.
Last night, I've been speaking to ICU doctors late last night, this morning as well, some telling me that they were disgusted by the scenes, that they were hugely annoyed and disappointed. They say that we are putting our lives at risk for these people. Another one went on to say that...
Oh my God, we are putting our lives at risk for these people. Huh?
That these people don't care and people are dying from the disease. It's heartbreaking to watch this. This was a street party that continued after the 10 p.m. curfew and bars and pubs had shut in Liverpool last night, and just hours before the Tier 3 lockdown restrictions came into force. Joe Anderson, the Mayor of Liverpool, coming out and speaking today as well. He said that these pictures are a shame to our city.
A shame to our city. People dancing and enjoying themselves in Concert Square. What is on the mind? What was going through the minds of those young men and women last night? Lawrence Buckman.
Enjoy yourself and kill a granny is the answer.
Exactly. We're going to have a good crack and, well, if we kill a granny, so be it. Do you believe you're living through this, you know? Well, look, if you can't beat him, join him. Down with that sort of thing, I say.
Down with this sort of thing. Careful now. Down with this sort of thing.
Down with that sort of thing. Yeah, that was in Liverpool last night. Like I said, Keir Starmer wants National lockdown for a few weeks. Johnson says no, but then he says we might have one. We'll see. Kids having the crack at Concert Square. Reuters reported last night, this is obviously an international news agency, Reuters. It reported last night on wearable technology, that we might all have to wear soon. It's a necklace, you see. What does it do, BBG? Well, it warns us when we are less than 2 meters away from another human being and thus in danger, presumably, of spreading the virus. It's called Bump. It's a necklace. Looks like a little pendant and it lights up and it tells you to get away from the person you're getting too close to. And it was used at the London Marathon. Here's Reuters.
A necklace encouraging you to keep a social distance. Meet Bump, the wearable device that helped this year's London Marathon take place despite restrictions due to COVID-19. Andrew Nicholson is the Group Marketing Manager at Tharsis, Bump's developer.
Bump's a wearable device around your neck, and it makes 2 signals, blue when you're 2 meters away from another bump wearer and red and a loud beep when you're 1 meter away.
Wow.
The device was worn by the 100 elite athletes and 500 race staff to help maintain the biosecure bubble ahead of the marathon on October 4, alerting the wearer when they came within 2 meters of another device.
Danger. You're getting too close to somebody. So it's called Bump. The London Marathon director reckons we can all wear it to get back to normal.
The London Marathon's director, Hugh Brasher, believes the technology can go beyond marathons.
I think that this technology can be used in business, really importantly, for companies trying to come back to the office. So many conversations going on about how do you ensure someone's safety. Health and safety is so important these days, not only offices but warehousing. And absolutely, could it be used in marathons in the future? Yes, but I think it's much wider about how it can be used to get us back to some form of normality.
Get us back to normal. And I was reading about Bump online, but this is true. You can see this if you go online and look for it. It has been embraced. It is being embraced by company directors. Business owners are embracing this and are basically saying, we're going to buy these and give them to our employees. And you will walk around the office now with one of these around your neck, alongside the laminate that you wear to identify yourself, the laminate even that you would use to get into the building. You'll wear your Bump now, and it will tell you when you're too close to your mate that you've worked alongside for years. And presumably, when you're entering your place of work, security guard will ask to see your Bump, and you'll be sent home if you don't have the Bump. Go back home and get it and come back. You can't go in without your Bump. Yeah. Kay Burley of Sky News, the Ginger Ninja. She reckons, does Kay, today, that it is vital we get the flu jab, but even more importantly, it's important, even more importantly, that our children get the flu jab. Have you ever wondered what an infomercial sounds like? Have you ever wondered what news... Say it again, Richie. Have you ever wondered what an infomercial masquerading as news sounds like? Aha, that's more like it. Infomercial masquerading as news. Well, here it is. Listen. Feast your ears. This is wonderful.
Well, this year, getting a flu vaccination is more important than ever before. Last winter, less than 45% of eligible children got their flu jab. But this year, the government is hoping to increase that to 75% to help them get there. They have enlisted presenter and parent, of course, Mylene Klass. She is with us now. Hello to you, Mylene. A very good morning to you. Why is this campaign so important to you?
Yeah, we'll come back to Mylene Klass in a moment. So Kay thinks it's important that we bump up those figures. What were those numbers again last year as opposed to what they want this year? Before
last winter, less than 45% of eligible children got their flu jab. But this year, the government is hoping to increase that to 75%.
Yeah. So they've enlisted the help of Mylene Klass, a singer who once found fame winning the first pop idol with a girl band. She's going to persuade more yummy mummies to give their kids the flu vaccine. I wouldn't throw Mylene out of bed for eating crisps now, it must be said. Why, Mylene? Why have you taken it upon yourself to join this campaign to get more children to get the flu vax. Why?
Well, I'm a mum of 3 children, and I think there's so much confusion out there. We hear so many mixed messages as to why you shouldn't get the flu vaccine. And I think there's a real fear. So if I want to come out in solidarity and reassure parents that it's definitely something that I will be doing. And especially with the current climate of us searching for vaccines, we have a flu vaccine, and it's something that we can take into our own control and look after our families with. So it's definitely something that all of my family are going to have, including my baby, because you can actually pass the vaccine on through breastfeeding, and my partner as well, who I'm going to make sure he gets vaccinated. It's not just for children, it's the whole family.
She's going to vaccinate the entire borough where she lives if she gets the chance. Mylene class. You did catch that bit there, didn't you, in the middle? I had to do a double take myself.
All of my family going to have, including my baby, because you can actually pass the vaccine on through breastfeeding.
You can pass it on through breastfeeding.
What kind of fuckery is this?
Yeah. I'd say it's fuckery, Amy, to be honest. All of my family are going to have it, including my baby, because I'll pass it on to her through breastfeeding. This is beautifully choreographed, this. Mylene has her lines, Kay has her lines. It's an infomercial. Do you think that a hack like Kay Burley doesn't know that children these days take it through a nasal spray and don't get the needle? Do you think that Kay doesn't know that? Of course Kay knows that. That's why it's an infomercial. They have their lines. This is dire.
Okay, so adults, we know that we need to have a jab. What about for kids? Because, little ones don't like injections at the best of times, do they?
See, Kay's reading her script there. Kay knows the answer, that it's a nasal spray. Shocking this, isn't it?
No, and do you know what? It's so annoying because so many people think, myself included, by the way, I've got it wrong in the past, that you have to have a jab. It's been labelled as the flu jab, but actually for the age groups that we're talking about, 2 years old upwards, up to I think it's 12 years old, they have a spray. Well, there's nothing frightening in any way about a spray. In fact, my daughter looks forward to it. She's 9 years old. She likes getting in the queue at school, and she likes the fact that it just tickles. And so I think if you actually dispel the fear and the myth that it's going to hurt and actually show them that they're empowering themselves. Every day we tell our children to wash their hands and know how to protect themselves against the COVID virus. Here, we're going to be able to empower our children to protect themselves against the flu virus.
Empower our children.
Virus. And goodness, we certainly don't want the combination of the two at the moment.
And it's a nasal spray, isn't it? I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah, you know it is, you ginger, you know.
It is a nasal spray. It's literally a matter of seconds and you have the flu vaccine in a spray form. It doesn't hurt.
Doesn't hurt. My daughter can't wait. She queues up for it. Yeah, I don't believe that for a minute. Any side effects?
Okay, and as far as any sort of side effects are concerned, because I think I'm right in saying that they give you a little tiny bit of flu in order for you to build up your antibodies against it.
This is an infomercial.
What about parents who might be concerned that might have a negative impact on their kids?
So there are so many parents that are given the wrong information as to if you get the flu vaccine, then you could potentially get the flu. You might have a small reaction to it, or you might show when the flu vaccine goes into you, you might exhibit slight signs of what that reaction looks like, but it won't be like the full-blown flu. And when you think of, the fact that economically, would you have to take extra days off work if your child did get the flu, or yourself as well, it makes sense for the entire family just to make sure they are vaccinated.
You've been listening to an infomercial produced by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, starring Kay Burley as herself and Mylene Class as a scab. Where's the bucket of tar and the wheelbarrow of feathers, eh? When you need it? Shocking stuff, that, isn't it? Isn't it? I've begun to believe, and I have no evidence to support this, so it's conjecture, it's just an opinion, and partly because a year and a half, more than 2, maybe 3 years ago, when I was in Fallowfield, and I was having a checkup. I was having a blood test done at my local doctor. And the nurse said to me that the flu vaccine they were administering this particular year seemed to be making a lot of people unwell. Now, I told you this. She wouldn't go on the record. Well, when I say she wouldn't go on the record, I didn't ask her to go on the record. She didn't know anything about me or what I was doing at the time. But she said to me, everybody who's gotten it in the surgery has come down with a very heavy dose. And I remember that particular morning, the woman working on reception was in a bad way. Very bad way. Very bad way. And I asked her, was she all right? And she said, yeah, I'm struggling, finding it pretty difficult. And I said, you had the vaccine? She went, yeah. But it's unusual, she said, that you would, end up like me. But the nurse had previously said to me 5 minutes earlier that a lot of people were like that. So I began to think, maybe you wouldn't have so much flu in the winter if there was no flu vaccine at all. I don't know. Just my opinion. It's not my opinion, it's a question. Would we have less flu without the flu vaccine? I don't know. Staying with vaccines just for the moment, Kate Bingham is heading up the UK Vaccine Task Force. Right, she's heading up the UK Vaccine Task Force. She was on the radio, BBC Radio 5 with Rachel Burden. Burden asked her this question.
When we get this vaccine, does it mean everything back to normal? Will we be magically released from all these restrictions?
Will we? Will we? Will we?
I mean, again, $1 million question. I can't answer that until we see the data. So, again, it will depend how effective these vaccines are and on whom. And I'd just be speculating to say that it'll all be fantastic. I think it's highly unlikely everybody will be protected forever with these vaccines. I just don't think that's going to happen yet. But I think we will be managing it more effectively. We've got more and more therapeutics which are managing the severity of symptoms for people who do get infected. And I think it is possible that we're going to need to continue to revaccinate people after they've had the initial vaccination in order to maintain that immune protection. So will we get back exactly to normal immediately? No. Will we get back to a working life that I think will be much more closer to normal than close to lockdown by the end of 21? I'm sure we would do.
Will we get back to normal straight away? No. Who are these people, huh? Who are these people? 22 minutes past 5. Michael O'Brien joining us live in about 10 minutes' time. James O'Brien presents for LBC. He's one of the worst radio presenters in the history of radio. That isn't conjecture either. That's a fact. Garbage. London School of Economics graduate, moron, not a journalist. Don't know how he ended up at LBC, but he did. Dreadful. Presented Newsnight for a short time, then he got pissed off at the BBC, or they got pissed off at him and they got rid of him. O'Brien is dreadful. He wants shitloads of lockdown, does James O'Brien. He wants loads of it, more of it. Here is O'Brien arguing with a listener. Now, the listener has said there should be some herd immunity, some return to normal while being careful. Listen to the prat that is James O'Brien on LBC today. It doesn't get any worse than this, believe me, and we've heard a lot of bad stuff.
I mean, normally these military analogies are appalling, but mine's very loose and I think therefore a little bit more effective. The enemy is at the gate. The engines of war are catapulting virus into our midst.
Catapulting virus into our midst. You've got to hear this again to believe you heard it.
I mean, normally these military analogies are appalling, but mine's very loose and I think therefore a little bit more effective. The enemy is at the gate. The engines of war are catapulting virus into our midst, or enemies into our midst, and we've decided this time we're not going to fight it tooth and nail. We're going to try and sort of lock that tower over there on a Tuesday and lock that tower over there on a Thursday, and everybody...
Lock that tower over there and lock that one over there. We should be locking everything down, says James O'Brien, who gets a 6-figure salary from LBC. He's got a very nice house in the country, a very nice flat in London. He's never wanted for a thing in his life, comes from a wealthy family. Little Lord, I'm not going to say it, never has had to cope with poverty, never had to wonder where the next meal is coming from. So he can sit there in Leicester Square, which is where LBC is based, and say things like, the enemy is at the gate, flinging coronavirus over the walls. And all we're doing is closing this tower on a Tuesday and this tower on a Thursday. We need to be locking everything down. This is the media. in 2020. Imagine it. It goes on.
Body can hide in the dungeons on a Friday, and hopefully the enemy will just sort of run out a puff and go home.
Well, no, I think we are getting some results, though. They
I hope
use
so.
steroids now. They're saying that...
That's very different. That's very different. That's treating people who have caught it. That's not stopping people from catching it. And I do insist on that distinction being observed.
I insist on that distinction being observed. Never been a violent man, me. In terms of what I mean by that is I've never been somebody who has ever resolved to settle a dispute or an argument with violence, and I never will be. Wouldn't mind 5 minutes in a room with James O'Brien, though. You know?
Yes, but we must get a herd immunity, surely.
There's no such thing. We haven't even got herd immunity for the flu.
Well, we have something, don't we?
No.
We do. I suppose we have a vaccine. You're right, we have a vaccine.
Herd immunity is a myth.
There is no such... It doesn't work with this?
In the context of coronavirus and COVID, we're just hearing about people dying, having been infected for a second time is in today's news.
That's a massive lie. We've been hearing about people dying, having had coronavirus for a second time. That hasn't been substantiated, that. It hasn't. There's been a story about some kid in Nevada who might have had it twice, but there's no evidence, there's no corroborated evidence that somebody has had it twice and died. It's just nonsense. This is your media, 2020. What do you do about that? What can you do about it? Violence is right out. Can't be violent. Must never be violent. Must never attack or assault anybody. Must never threaten anybody. What do you do about people like that? Who's selling out his fellow man and woman on a daily basis? And he's not alone, of course, in it. You've got Piers Morgan on ITV. You've got the Sky News presenters. They know this is nonsense. Outside of that, you've got Peter Hitchens in the Daily Mail. You've got Alison Pearson in the Telegraph. You've got people like James Dellingpole. You've got Breitbart. You've got Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill, a few others. But the majority of them, 99 out of 100 of them, are selling this. And they know they're selling it to the public. They're selling it. They're not challenging it. They're not questioning it. They're not pulling it asunder. Even though it would be like taking sweets or candy, sweets we say here, from a child. It's that easy to dismantle this nonsense now. The arbitrary measures, the data that doesn't add up, the fake PCR test which doesn't work, the lies, the death numbers themselves. So easy to rip it to shreds. What's going on with these journalists and these presenters? So what do you do? How do you deal with it? Outside of attacking people and nobody should ever do that. You attack somebody, you deserve to be in prison. You go up to somebody and punch them in the face, you deserve to go to court for it. It's not the right thing to do. I see people on Twitter all the time. We have to deal with these people. No, you don't. Not like that. It's what the system wants. There has to be another way. I don't know what it is, though, because time is running out. That was the news roundup for Wednesday, the 14th of October. James O'Brien doesn't know the first thing about herd immunity. He's a London School of Economics educated muppet who fell into radio somehow. Got no skill, got no talent, got no charisma. Wouldn't be presenting on radio 25, 30 years ago. Wouldn't have gotten inside the door. But there he is now today selling the agenda. And I suppose that's the answer to how, in the name of God, does a moron like that get on the radio. I've probably answered my own question. Here's Bobby Darin.